And hello, welcome to our second session of Farm Dreams. If you weren't able to attend the first session, I have the recording uploaded and I will send out an email after this session with a link to that, so you guys can watch that if you would like to. And so if you weren't here last week, Farm Dreams is really about helping you get your vision on paper and get some perspective from farmers in North Dakota who are living their farm dreams and kind of helping you identify what the next steps would be. So today we have Alyssa and Marvin, who are two North Dakota farmers, but from almost opposite sides of North Dakota. So we will get both of their perspectives tonight. And then I have a short presentation about some of the programs that Farms offers. I'm especially going to be talking about our Farm Beginnings program, which is kind of the next step. Farm Dreams and Farm Beginnings work together pretty closely. So I'll spend a few minutes at the end talking about that. But most of the time tonight is going to be spent with our farmer speakers. Before we get into it, we'll do a short introduction. I am not going to spend as much time this week on introductions just because we had the chance to kind of get to know each other last week. But I will just have everyone go around and introduce themselves. If you would just like to say your name, your location, where you're calling in from, and then a detail about your farm dream that excites you or makes your heart race. So I will give you guys a second and I'm going to put that question in the chat here. And we'll just do this kind of round robin, so feel free to share whenever. And I will kind of do a slow start here just to make sure that everyone has a chance to get logged in. So I'll start. My name is Felicity Merritt. I'm calling in from Fargo, North Dakota. I work remotely from farms, so we're kind of located all throughout the state, but my home is in Fargo, which is where I'm calling in from today. And I love this part of my job, working with people, getting to know people and hearing other people's farm dreams. So for me, that is what makes my heart race. And so I am going to mute myself. Anyone else go ahead and share.
I can kick things off. I'm Catherine Bird. I'm also in Fargo. And I think the thing that excites me is for the first time, just having an idea about something that I could potentially do throughout my whole life, whether it's in different capacities, but just being able to take a passion of mine that I know I'll be able to kind of do potentially forever in some form or fashion makes me the most excited.
My name is Jay Callender. I'm calling in from Fargo. Something that excites me about kind of my farm dream is the perennial aspects of growing fruits and vegetables and things like that, things that come back every year and I don't have to plant on an annual basis. I always get really excited and I want to know all the different things that we can grow in our climate since we are so cold.
All right, I can go next. Craig Burns. I got a wicked sinus infection, so forgive me. And calling in from Grand Forks, and I get excited about being able to help teach people how to be more self-sustaining.
I can go. Paul Leppin, Beagle Hill Organic Farm in Minot, and I just really like providing just quality food to people, quality produce to people. Whether I charge for it or not, I still like passing it out.
Alyssa from the Christine Walcott area, about 20 miles south of Fargo. And what excites me about my farm dream is letting people know how important local flowers are to the community.
I guess it's my turn. I'm Marv Baker, and I live in Carpio, a small town right in the middle between Minot and Kenmare. And I guess what still excites me after a lot of years is being an integral part of the rise of farmers markets in North Dakota.
Okay. Oh, go ahead.
Yep, I'll go next. Will Cromarty, Fargo, North Dakota. I'm looking at getting into yak ranching, which is very unusual throughout the U.S. and especially in North Dakota. So excited at the idea of getting deeper into that.
Okay. All right. I think we all had a chance to introduce themselves. I said this last week, I'll say it again. This is one of my favorite parts just because we get to hear the range of what everyone is interested in doing. And I love that we all ended up here to talk about it with other weirdos who want to, start farms. So before we get into the farmer presenters tonight, I want to share my screen and go through the harvest document from last week. This was just a place where we kind of shared some thoughts about what we learned last week. So, and I want to go over those and just kind of get back into that mindset of things that we were excited about and questions that we had last week. And then we'll do the same thing at the end of the session today. So one of the things that just kind of an overview last week, people were excited about meeting other like-minded people and being able to share a lot in common around having maybe a non-traditional farm or starting really small and then scaling up and just being excited to share that with each other. And then there were still a lot of questions around making this happen, right? So we had questions around resources, about, building your soil, access to land, finding funding, and then marketing. So all things that I want to kind of keep in mind today that people did have questions on. And then I wanted to point out that last week, Stephanie put in some resources related to things that we talked about last week. And I will continue to add to things if anything comes up tonight about this, but just some of the things that were mentioned was the organic farming conference in Wyoming, some farms books that we had available, some webinars. And then this is a link to a document from the North Dakota Local Food Development Alliance that has some grants that are available for local food organizations and for farms. So just so that you guys know that that is there moving forward. Before we get into it, does anyone have questions? Okay. All right. I am going to then move into our first speaker, and this will be similar kind of setup. So I will be first asking a few questions, and we will be talking through those together. And then I will have time for anyone to ask questions after that. We'll take a quick break, and then we will have our second farmer presenter in the same style. And then I'll have a short presentation at the end. So if you have questions, you feel free to put them into the chat box and we can talk through them at the end, but write them down or put them in the chat box during the first part. So first we're going to hear from Alyssa. So Alyssa is going to talk to us about starting her sustainable flower farm, Exit 44 Flowers and More. Alyssa was actually an intern for Farms in 2020 and then hosted an intern this year for the first time in 2022. So I'm really excited to have you here, Alyssa, to kind of share your experience. So if you are willing, I'm going to make your video big here for everyone, and then go ahead and introduce yourself, and then I will go through my questions. All right, so you should be good to go.
All right, so as Felicity mentioned, my name is Alyssa, and my farm is Exit 44 Flowers and More. We are about 20 miles south of town, just off of the Christine exit, aka Exit 44. And I grow cut flowers. Amongst other things in our plans, we just established 125 elderberry bushes this last year, and we have plans to add more berries and fruit-bearing things around the farm. I just wrapped up my second growing season, and I am excited for next year.
Okay, thank you. Let me go in here and I will start with my first question. So starting up, what motivated you to start farming? How did you make that decision to take that leap?
I kind of fell into it. I had lived in an apartment my whole life. I didn't have any gardening experience, plant experience. And then I hit my mid-20s, got a couple house plants, started doing herbs from seed. I had a lemon tree at one point. It was a good time. And then my husband and I actually moved out to the farm in 2015, and it was completely overgrown. The gentleman that lived here was in his mid-80s and could not keep up with the maintenance. So just like as we uncovered things, I was finding all of this hidden beauty that really came to life that next spring. I discovered I had a giant lilac bush right outside my front door. So in springtime for 2 weeks, I get this amazing scent. And then there was an entire bed of established perennial flowers. And then that kind of got the ball a little bit rolling. And then I grew flowers for my wedding. And from there, I stumbled across flower farming, and I was like, this sounds like what I want to do and do with the property. Really expand on the natural beauty that was already here and make it work and learn the maintenance of all of the things that I have here already.
Yeah, so what was that transition like for you as far as just like quality of life, moving out into the country and starting a flower farm?
Moving out here it's crazy to me because I grew up in an apartment building, so I was surrounded by concrete. You know, there's a couple of trees, a little playground, whatever. But you know, I'm surrounded by nature. I look up at the sky and I can see the Milky Way, and that's always just been one of the leading factors into farming. And then in my internship, I discovered, you know, farming is a lifestyle. When you wake up in the morning, you are on go, especially during growing season. You know, from watering, planting, harvesting, weed management, you know, farming is your whole life. For me with flowers, you know, I can't cut flowers during the heat of the day. So my days would start early, the heat of the day would come, and I could do a few things inside, and then I would go out as the sun was setting to harvest more flowers. And with flowers, I mean, the excitement and joy that people get when they pick up a bunch of flowers down at the farmer's market, or whether I deliver a CSA, it fuels my soul. So.
Oh, thank you. So I'm sure it was not all beautiful and amazing. What were some of the challenges that you first experienced in those kind of establishing years?
So last year was our very first growing season. And I should explain that our property is about 12 acres. The house sits on 6 acres, and then we have 6 acres of conventional farmland. My husband won't let me tear up the lawn. So I had to work into the farm field, which actually had corn in it the previous year. So it was a little tricky getting things started. And I honestly didn't know if they were going to get the corn out that year before winter set in, but they did. It was just still a little challenging to set up everything. And, corn has such like deep roots, and their stalks are tough. So that was one thing I had to work with just beginning and setting up my system and my beds. And then we got hit with a drought. So I had gotten everything set up. I had all of my seeds planted, was doing everything. Everything was supposed to be falling in line, but I ended up with, stunted plants. And I would say the farm really didn't look that great until September, when we finally started getting rain. There's nothing like a good rain. I was really fortunate with the rain this year. But this year we got aphids. So that was a new challenge. I had never sprayed anything before, so I had to look into sprays, trying to find the most organic solution to my problem. And with these challenges, I also made connections with other flower farms and other farms in general. Nelson Aronia farm I worked with this year because they had put in a giant patch of zinnias and they weren't doing anything with them. And that was my number one affected flower, because it's not something that you can cut early. So the bugs would get to it before it was mature, and that's one of my biggest crops. And I also work with other flower farmers in the area that mainly sell to florists, but they're happy to work with me. And then I've actually had a couple of home gardeners reach out to me that their hobby is just growing things, and they've invited me out to look at their place. And, when I had my aphid issue this year, they're like, oh, you can come and cut whatever you like, help yourself. And just finding that community with those challenges was so helpful.
Yeah, you touched on this a little bit, but how has your farm changed from you've had two years?
Yeah, 2 growing seasons.
Okay, what have been like the biggest changes in that first year?
Making those connections, that really helped me out this year, and expanding those connections as well, working with other people. I'm going to be working with the plant supply with dried flowers for their new space in Brewhalla when that opens up early 2023, and really diversifying my products. When I first started out, I grew a handful of things and quickly learned that I need to add more things, and that was I had to pinch myself a few times this year because everything was just going so well, and it was nice.
That's exciting.
Yes.
So you talked a little bit about diversifying your products. How did you decide where to sell your products? So you have like a little bit of a unique farm. So how did you find those markets?
So I was fortunate enough when I was an intern for farms that my host farm, Jen Skoog with Family Roots Farm, I had a small flower patch, and she was like, well, why don't you start bringing bouquets down to Red River Market? And I got to experience Red River Market, learn what customers were looking for. And it was a weird year because it was 2020, so there weren't as many vendors as normal. There were mask protocols, not a lot of people coming through, but people were excited to see the flowers. And she had tried bringing the flowers to some of the smaller markets, and they just never really sold. So I knew from that season that I needed to be at Red River Market, and that I was going to need to really have a large growth setup to get to those people at Red River Market.
Okay, I'm going a little off script from the questions
yeah.
I said I was going to ask you, just fair warning. So you did a flower CSA this year too, right?
I did do a flower CSA. I got that idea from social media and a few YouTubers I followed. I had things in the spring, but I didn't have any market to sell at. So I was like, well, maybe this will be like kind of my starting point of something. And I thought it turned out really well. We did have that colder start, so I did have, some things that were shorter, and then I had some deer pressure. So I was like, I don't know what's going on with these flowers. They're really trying here. But it was fun going to people's houses and dropping off their bouquets, and also seeing their garden spaces. I might be dropping off a bouquet of tulips. Meanwhile, they have tulips in their, yard, but when you plant something in your landscape, you don't really want to cut it. You want it to be there and to be pretty. So that was one of the fun things. I was like, oh, you're already growing this, but you don't want to cut it. So
Yeah. And so you also added in dried flowers. Were those from your first season that you dried and then made arrangements for the next year, or where did
so it is continuous from year to year. I have a few things left over from last year, but I did try to use that product at the end of market season last year. I had made the wreaths by hand from branches that I had to cut down some things, and then I didn't have time to cut branches this year, so I had to invest the money into hoops, and that seemed to attract the customers that I was trying to reach, and also exploring what sizes that they liked and what kind of flowers they were liking dried versus flowers that they liked fresh too. And dried flowers is a whole world. It's coming back on trend. So lots of fun things out there.
So I've been to your booth at the market, and you will sometimes have a build your own bouquet bar. Was that new this year, and how did that go?
So I had implemented it a little bit last year, but my problem last year was that I had a single booth. And there just really wasn't enough room for people to have the full experience of building their own bouquet. So this year we decided to go big or go home. We tripled our growing space this year. And at the peak of summer, we switched to a double booth. We had started off with one booth, and then as the season went on, more flowers came in, was able to transition to a double booth, and then the bouquet bar really took off. People really enjoyed the experience. And not that my fresh bouquets weren't selling either. It was like some people would pick up a bouquet, but then want to add more to it. So it was kind of like an add-on feature, or, you know, someone with their kids came up and they're like, oh, we just want a couple flowers, you know, so the kid can walk around with their flower all happy at the farmer's market. So that's definitely fun, and people really enjoyed it, and I got great feedback. So it will be at markets to come.
Okay. Yeah, thank you. I remember seeing that and thinking it was such a good idea. So let me get back to my questions here. So you talked about the change from year 1 to year 2. What are the upcoming changes that you're most excited about? Like, what are you excited about for the future of your farm?
Really honing in on my skills and what I grow. Just because something can grow here doesn't necessarily mean that I can grow it. I had a few issues with things. I was like, well, you're not for me. I'll try something else next year. So just experimenting and just seeing how far we can grow. I do have access to about 6 acres, and my end goal is to have the whole thing covered in flowers and berry bushes and trees. So just create a happy place for people to actually come out and do U-Pick events is another one of the goals.
Okay. And I just have one last question for you, and that is, what is your advice for new farmers?
Number one, don't be afraid to fail. There's always going to be challenges and things that you screw up on. It's okay. You know, farming and gardening, it always takes practice, and you never know until you try something, and you just kind of move on from there. And then my other thing that's a really big one is having an emotional support system. There's still a fly in my house. Jeez. Having the emotional support system, you know, there have been many times where I've been down and my husband's had to pick me back up, or, you know, be my cheerleader. And then I have a couple girlfriends. One's a mom of 3 kids and is understanding and works with like emotional things. And then my other friend is a small business owner, so she shares my struggles, and we talk through those things, you know, together as, you know, women in business, trying to grow and expand.
Great. Well, that brings me to the end of my questions. Thank you so much, Alyssa. It was great to hear about your farm and what you have going on. And we do have about 15 minutes here for questions and discussion. So I'm going to figure out us back to gallery view here so that everyone kind of has the chance to chat. So any questions, concerns, comments, anything that came up, feel free to ask.
I have a question.
Mhm.
Alyssa, how often did you do that flower CSA?
So I had a 5-week spring CSA, and then I also had a 5-week summer CSA. I am doing both of those again, but I'm also introducing a 10-week subscription where it would start in the spring and finish up in September. And then also creating a monthly option where people would just get a bouquet of flowers once a month.
Thank you.
Hi, Alyssa. So how do you present those flowers? Like, do you buy vases in bulk someplace, or how do you do that? Or you just sell it? Put them in a bag? Or what?
So I actually get floral buckets from like grocery stores. I just ask if they have any extra buckets. It's a good time around like big holidays like Valentine's Day to be like, hey, I'll take some of those extra buckets off of you. And then I do sell in mason jars as well. I have a pint size option and a quart size option. And then for the build your own, they would create their own bouquet, and then I would put their bouquet into a pint sleeve, a pint paper sleeve, with my logo attached to it.
What's a floral bucket?
Just black buckets, basically, that you know, Hornbachers, grocery stores will get their flowers delivered to in those vessels, and they always have excess that generally they do recycle a lot, but a lot of them end up in the garbage anyway. So I take as much free buckets as I can.
Are they, it's about like a 3-gallon bucket size? They're pretty,
Yes,
pretty,
they do range in size.
Okay.
So there's probably like a 1-gallon size, but it's tall and skinny. The 3-gallon size, like you mentioned, is probably the more common size. And then they have one that's not quite like a 5-gallon, but it's taller and a little more thin. So that works for large stems like sunflowers.
Who did you ask the first time when you were looking for buckets? Like, did you call or did you walk into and just ask?
I was actually working at Hornbachers, and I noticed that they always had all these extra buckets, and I was like, what are you doing with those? And they're like, some of them, you know, like I said, will get recycled, but a lot of them do end up in the waste system. So it started from there, and now I have buckets on buckets on buckets.
What's your best-selling flower?
Ooh. Sunflowers would be number 1, and then zinnias are definitely a close second. And when I got hit with aphids, like I said, that was a hard hit, because the zinnias, they go in so many of my bouquet work, and they're a big part of the bouquet bar. So when those got hit with aphids, I was lucky enough to have a friend that I could go out and cut their flowers.
Do you sell the sunflowers in a bouquet or by themselves? And are they the big ones like this, or?
So I actually grow my sunflowers a little closer together so they don't get super big. And they come in a wide range of colors. So I try to start my season off with lighter colors and then work my way into more of like the traditional sunflower, and then finish off the season with those darker tones. Yeah.
You use those Johnny's Pro Cut flowers?
Yeah, Pro Cut. I actually go to sunflowerselections.com. They're the breeders of Pro Cuts,
Oh, okay.
and they have a various selection. And then I use them in bouquet work, and then I also have them in my bouquet bar for people to buy separately.
I had a question on the CSA, unless Paul, you were still going. I don't want to cut you off. Okay. I don't know much about like how you're getting those out, like if you're literally driving them or you're shipping things or having a pickup place, but did you have a radius that you were willing to serve? Like, I will come within 30 miles, or how did you make that decision, and what did the logistically look like?
I have done deliveries all the way out to Mapleton. Basically, if it's as far as my house is to Fargo, I'm willing to go that distance. So this year I had a couple Dilworth deliveries, but I just mapped out my route. And yes, I'm the one that's driving around. Sometimes I get my husband to take me and then take me out on a date afterwards. Yeah, Dilworth was the farthest, but I have delivered out to, like I said, Mapleton, which would be just as far west as I am south of town. So that's kind of my max.
Yeah, that makes sense. I just didn't know if, like, you know, if someone did have a specific delivery, if you're like, well, you have to spend X amount of dollars if I'm going to come all that way, you know, or how you make those decisions. Just thinking logistically, since you are kind of outside of Fargo.
Right. I do try to factor my drive time into the pricing as well.
Yeah.
Because when the spring CSA was going on, gas was not cheap. I was like, oh, luckily we have a couple cars that are gas savers, and that worked out. So
Thank you.
yeah.
Just to plug, Alyssa, I was going to say, have you tried homeopathy for plants? That works really well for aphids.
I have not.
It's cool. It's a cool thing to get into.
I'm gonna write that down right now.
And cheap.
Yes, thank you.
What have you noticed, like, trends from your like customer base? Do people come to you like looking for flowers, or did you feel like you kind of had to show people that they wanted flowers, or did that market already exist? Like, how did that relationship work?
Let's see here. So when I was an intern, I noticed that there wasn't any flower vendors. So I definitely thought that was my niche to get into the market. And then from there, just working on social media posts. My, I guess, age range is 18 to 35 is my typical customer, and typically women are the consumers. So I do my best to target that audience. But I also have gentlemen come into the booth and say, oh, I want to bring a bouquet to my girlfriend, my wife. And then I have people that have made it a weekly ritual to come to the market and pick up one of my bouquets. And so I've kind of created my little following.
You have any problems with four-legged pests?
Oh, yes.
And man, how do you deal with that?
Hair.
Hair?
Hair. I have a friend that owns a children's salon, and I go and pick up bags of hair from her, and those protect my tulips and a lot of things that animals would want to munch on. The deer haven't come too often through the property, and what they were interested in were sunflowers, and I do plant branching varieties as well as single stem varieties, but my single stem ones that they had munched on actually sent up branching shoots because they were stressed, and that's something that can happen. It's supposed to be a single flower, but here they got stressed out and they're like, I must produce as much as possible. And then gophers are another thing around here too, but the hair has definitely been helpful with my plantings. Lilies and tulips, it's kind of hard to do hair around sunflowers, so just kind of hope and pray that nobody takes a majority of it. I always try to plant more than I think I'll need if some animal did try to take out my crop. And succession planting is big too.
Yeah.
I have more questions. So how do you make the decisions about what types of flowers go in, or are you still just kind of experimenting with what works?
It's a little bit of experiment and a little bit of what I've seen out in the industry. I do try to focus on things that are drought tolerant. And sorry, dog wants to go out. He's whining at me. I try to do things that are drought tolerant and have less are less disease prone. But I want to try, fun things too that are a little more difficult. So, there are seeds that I could be starting in January and seeing how it goes, even though I typically don't start seeds until March-ish. But yeah, there's a few things like Lysianthus and eucalyptus that take forever to grow, but they're beautiful and they smell good. And it's definitely things I want to try, and there's still so many things out there that I haven't tried yet.
I have one last question, and then we can take a break. But if anyone else has a couple questions, we do have time. I don't remember if you mentioned this, Alyssa. Do you have like a greenhouse or high tunnel or like raised beds? I think you touched at this on the beginning, but I can't remember.
We put up our first high tunnel this year. I'm hoping it makes it through the winter. I tried to put it in the least exposed spot as possible, but if I get a straight north wind or a straight south wind, I am looking out my window constantly, making sure that my plastic hasn't flown away. We had it up all summer. We just every time we went to go and put the plastic on, it was a windy day, so it didn't go on until right before the frost came.
Okay, so it'll be your first season.
Yes,
growing in. Okay. Well,
yeah,
congratulations.
I'm excited. I put about 300 tulips in there, and I have plans to do some early spring plantings in there. So fingers crossed that everything kind of works out.
Any last questions for Alyssa? All right. Well, thank you so much, Alyssa. It was great to hear about your farm and everything you have going on. I'm gonna have us take our break right now. It's a little early, but we'll take a break from 6:45 to 6:55 Central Time, and then we will come back and hear from Marvin after the break. Okay, so I am going to introduce our next speaker, and it'll be very similar kind of layout. I have some questions, and then we will go through those and have time for discussion at the end. So today we have Marvin Baker with us. Marvin has been a farmer. I was just thinking about this. Was it about 20 years? Maybe to say a long time.
Not quite 20, 17.
Okay. 17 years, and has been involved in farms for a long time and other farmers market and local foods across the state. So I am really excited to have you here and to kind of give that perspective of someone who has an established farm in North Dakota, and to hear how things have changed and how you've kept it going all this time. So if you would be able to quickly introduce yourself, Marvin, and then I can get through some questions for you.
Okay, my name is Marvin Baker, and as I mentioned at the top, I live in Carpio, which is a small town between Minot and Kenmare. The farm is called North Star Farms, and we've been certified organic for 16 years, and that's been a big thing for us. And we started, maybe my year's off, but we started in 2004, so that's actually 18 years. We didn't really do much that first year. We just purchased some property and kind of started grooming it a little bit. But in the following year, in 2005, then we started planting and harvesting. And it's just grown from there.
Yeah. Put my video up here. All right. So do you want to just say what you kind of what you produce and where you've been selling it?
Sure. I'd like to say we do the entire gamut of garden produce because there's such a list. I think there's 73 different types of produce that we grow. So, but some are better than others. And, the garlic, the peas, the onions, potatoes, and tomatoes, those are probably the top five sellers. And when we started this out, my wife and I, we created a market here in Carpio, and it wasn't really necessarily to make any money, but to help the most elderly people living here, because they don't always get into Minot. And at that time, there was some talk of these food deserts and such. So we started that, and then in 2007, we started North Prairie Farmers Market in Minot, which became part of a consortium of markets. But some of those have died out now, but we still exist and are doing quite well. And then in 2009, we started a CSA in Bismarck. So we took the 155-mile trip every Friday to Bismarck. And we did that for 2 years. And then we decided we'd start focusing more attention on the Minot Air Force Base because we had a good clientele in Bismarck, or we built it, but it was just too far. So it was too expensive and too time consuming. Although we've never forgotten that that's where we got our start. And so now it's the CSA is Minot and the Minot Air Force Base.
Riverbound Farms started.
Oh, yeah, there was Riverbound Farm started too there, so. And they, when we left Bismarck, we recommended that our customers go with them.
Okay, thank you. Would you talk a little bit about how farming has affected your quality of life and your lifestyle?
Okay. Dirty, muddy clothes, getting bit by mosquitoes, dirt under my fingernails. I'm kidding. It's really hell because, I mean, seasonally, I suppose from March to the end of October, it's just a whirlwind of activity. But in the winter months, there's time to think about it. But well, the thing was, I spent a lot of years. I spent 35 years in the National Guard, and I kind of moved up the food chain during those years. And as I got older and got promoted, I thought, you know, there's going to come a day when that money's not going to be there. And so I tried to come up with something that would replace that income. And this is it. Because I knew at turning 60 years old, I'd get kicked out of the National Guard because at that age, they don't let you continue. So we started this little operation. We purchased 2 city lots for back taxes. And there was a condemned house on that property and it was overgrown. It looked like a jungle, but we took the plunge and I mean, it was cheap. It was $200. So we got a pretty good deal actually, but we had to tear that house down. But we saved a lot of that lumber and recycled it. But the overgrown property, trees had to be cut down and taken out to the city dump or ran through a wood chipper or something. We did all that, landscaped it, and put up a greenhouse, a passive solar commercial greenhouse, and went from there. And then in 2010, we expanded and now it's all that's all stabilized, but it's become, we've built up a clientele over the years and it's gotten a little bit better every year, it seems like. So it's really helped, pay the bills and put money back into the farm so we can purchase, better quality seeds and better equipment and so on, and hire people from time to time.
What are some of the challenges that you have come across or faced along this journey?
I guess the biggest one, the most gargantuan or colossal or whatever you want to call it, was the flood of 2011. Because the property that we have is river bottom land and it's on the Des Lacs River. And that year, or that previous fall in 2010, we put down 3,600 garlic plants. And we lost 100% of those garlic plants. That was a big hit because, financially, it took its toll on us. That was the biggest thing. Equipment breakdowns. When we started out, we had a lot of ramshackle equipment. We just picked up. My sister's boyfriend would sell us a tractor or something, and it was just, junk because it was cheap. And so we had a lot of equipment breakdowns early on, and I can fix some things, but I'm not the best mechanic in the world, but we limped through it, and now we've got much better equipment that's stable and reliable. Lack of labor. We've had some problems getting labor, although we've really had farms has been good to us because for some reason, I can't explain it. We've always been blessed with a decent intern every year, and that's really been a big plus for us. But outside of that, finding labor is difficult. And then the drought last year wasn't even close to the magnitude of that flood in 2011, but that drought was creepy because we had 9 days go over 100 degrees, and the benchmark has always been 1936, and they had 4 days go over 100 that year, and so it was hard to keep up. And I'll never forget August 16th of last year. It was a picking day because we go to CSA on Wednesday, so Monday I picked, and it was 106 degrees that day. And I was okay. I was fine. I worked through the whole day and picked my stuff. But what bothered me was I noticed a row of peppers. I could just see those peppers wilt before my eyes. That was difficult to take. But those are probably the biggest challenges. And then we've had some pests. Deer haven't been a problem because we're on an oxbow, and I think they sense they're gonna be trapped, so they've never gone in there. But in 2020, we actually had beavers stealing peas, and I actually caught one on. I actually took a picture of one doing it because I didn't think anybody was going to believe me. Anyway, they were tearing my peas apart, so I contacted USDA up in Kenmare, and the guy came down and trapped 6 beavers out of the Delax right there. And it wasn't just myself; the neighbors' trees were getting knocked down too. So I guess so. Flood and drought. A lot of, I've had to be away on National Guard duty every year until I retired in 2013. So summer camp, 9 times out of 10, you go to summer camp, and then that 10th year, you go to winter camp. And so when I was gone, my wife and our daughter Heidi, they would work and keep things going while I was gone. And then from February of March 2006 to July 2007, I was on active duty at U.S. Central Command. So I was gone. I was either in Tampa, Florida, or in the Middle East. So that's where Eileen and Heidi took this on in a big way and succeeded to keep us going through that year.
So how did you guys, how did you get through that? How were you able to hold on to those goals and keep this farm going despite, everything that's happened year after year?
Well, one thing is, if we kind of decided early on that if we didn't continue in 2006, we were going to lose a clientele, because we could see even back then that it was beginning to build. And so somehow we had to continue in 2006. And so Eileen and Heidi took the reins and did well with it. The flood was devastating. I mean, I was about ready to quit, because for 24 hours, 100% of our cropland was underwater. But the one good thing about the Delax is it falls as quickly as it rises, but that still did a lot of damage. And that was probably the closest I came to just throwing in the towel. Because it was just financially, it wasn't just the damage, it was the financial part of it. because we only probably produced a third of what we should have. And so it just, but you keep going. I mean, it's just something I've always wanted to do, and just had to keep going. Because honestly, that can't happen twice. Well, it can. I should rephrase that. It can happen twice in a matter of a few years, because that was a 500-year flood, and this is not normal. So 2012 is going to be better, and it was.
What kind of changes did you make to your operation in response to some of those challenges? Just what were some either production or marketing or, just the way that you set up your farm? What kind of things have changed?
I suppose the biggest change would have been in 2011 when we opened up our greenhouse on the 28th of May, and it went underwater on the 31st of May. But from that point forward, we didn't have to go elsewhere to purchase plants. Because we're organic, we had to make trips to Glendale. Is it Glendale, Minnesota? By Alexandria? Glenwood, Minnesota. So we made trips all the way down there to get our plants, and that took a chunk of money. Well, once that greenhouse got built, the spring of 2012, we've been growing our own stuff ever since. And that really helped us. It was a big change. Let's see. I'm sorry, can you
I came up with another question. Again,
Okay.
I'm going off of book of what I said I was going to ask, but can you talk about the decision to become certified organic and to keep, like, you guys remained certified organic that whole time? Why did you decide that for your farm, especially in those early years?
Because there's a couple of reasons. One is because early in my National Guard career, I was appointed as appointed as the chemical operations instructor. And so I had to learn all I could about chemical warfare. And I learned a lot about what those chemicals do to the human body. And a lot of them are very similar to agricultural chemicals. That was the first thing, and that goes back to 1984. The second thing is, when we started in 2005, we weren't yet organic, but we were practicing it. It was a matter of, we just wanted to have safer food for the family, because even then we were learning about the dirty dozen, the potatoes, the peaches, and that kind of thing. So it really wasn't even a decision. It was, and in fact, it was kind of the timing was horrible, because it was 2006, and that was the year I got activated. So I filled out all that paperwork before I left for Fort McCoy, Wisconsin. And we were informed later that year that we'd been selected or chosen or whatever, we got certified. And then in 2011, we were given an endorsement by the Canadian Food Inspection Agency, which really was, we must be doing something right. But, and in those early years, it was more of a niche, like Heinz ketchup or Nike or something. Well, now it's become a point where it's just grown. I mean, customers in Minot know that we're organic, and they come to us to get organic products. And it's actually become, I'm not going to say profitable, but it's become better over the years. It easily pays for itself. And we get a kickback from the state ag department for a reimbursement, I guess, for the fees and so on, but and that's something really I wanted to do since I was in high school, but never got the chance because off to college, joined the military, live in apartments for several years. Never got the chance to do it until we came here and found that property for back taxes.
So they now seek you out because of your organic certification,
Yes,
your products, okay.
a lot of people do. And we, in fact, we've had a number of cancer patients come to us and say, we want to get produce from you. And came to realize that it's quite a few people. But we made a decision we would never try to market that. If they come to us, great, but we will never market that.
I'm gonna ask another off-book question. So when I first heard of your farm, when I was first working with farms, I think it first got on my radar because you are growing all kinds of fun and different produce varieties. Can you talk about like why you guys decided to experiment? Was that solely just for fun, or were you looking for a specific niche? And your decision around kind of experimenting with new or unexpected crops.
Well, early on, it was fun. It was just something different because, everybody grows tomatoes, right? So I just wanted to have something different. So in 2005, we started to grow, I don't know if you can see these, but peanuts. And just kind of looked for things every year that were unusual. And we've kind of kept that going. I mean, and some of it we take to the market and does pretty well. I guess okra would be one of those things. And so, but there have been failures. I'll admit it. We've tried growing pineapple. That didn't work. We've tried growing ginger. That didn't work. We did succeed growing some sugar cane, but the raccoons took it down. They thought it was corn because it kind of resembles corn in a way. But it was fun, and now it's just part of the planning for next year. Just got to have something weird or unusual.
Okay. I have a couple more questions here. So,
Okay.
what are some of the resources that you rely on to keep your farm going? So either emotional, financial resources, or like ag and production resources.
Well, emotionally, I mean, it would be my wife, Eileen. I mean, because we discuss just about everything. And she's always been encouragement to kind of get me over some of those bad spots when, everybody has a bad day. So there's that. And then financially, we've kind of struggled through it. We've received some grant and loans from farms over the years. We try to kept that to a minimum. And
Dakota College gave us $20,000 for the.
yeah, and then Dakota College in Bottineau, or the Entrepreneurial Center for Horticulture, gave us $20,000 in 2009 for that greenhouse. And we'd have never been able to build it had it not been for that grant. And then as far as educational support, I guess the biggest thing would be the North Dakota Farmers Market and Growers Association, going to that convention every year, because there's just a lot of educational opportunities. You get to network with a lot of people. And I've gone to Moses, which is that organic conference. It's actually in, I think you said Wyoming, it's in Wisconsin. And then also I've relied early years, especially in the early years, I relied on at that time, it was called Cal Davis, but now it's called UC Davis. That's the land grant university in California. It's all about produce. I mean, they have professors that teach garlic, if you can believe that. And I've kind of leaned on those guys every once in a while for advice, and they've really been helpful. And otherwise, it would be the Dakota College at Bottineau. And to a lesser extent, Cornell University has a lot of good information about fruits and vegetables.
Okay, my last question for you, and it's the last question I've asked all of our presenters. What is your advice for new farmers?
Draw up a business plan and stick with it. Because when you do that, you have a goal in mind and plow through it. Stick with that plan, because if you deviate from it, you may not know what avenue you're going to end up in. This way, you know exactly where you're going. It's a roadmap for your success. So take that business plan and stick with it.
Okay, thank you, Marvin. I learned something new about your farm every time we talk. So thanks so much for
You're welcome.
sharing. And I am now going to open it up again. We have about 10-15 minutes. Anyone who has a question, feel free to ask.
I didn't explain it that well, did I?
Well, I guess I could ask a question. One I have as I'm thinking of expanding and is, I guess, where did you, because you started out, you aren't a farmer traditionally, you had other career, your education, what were you leaning on of, okay, what should I go and how do I do it? And how do I fix my soil? And how do I, what were the main, I know you listed some of them with Cornell and UC, but and Moses, but just that's the big thing, is just getting over some of the, who do I lean on, who do I go to, and where do I get equipment?
Okay, I guess you're right. I should have mentioned that the county agent. And where I live, I'm lucky to have 2 county agents, because we're kind of sandwiched. We actually live in Ward County, but Burke is right next door, and so we've had a lot of advice from the Burke County Extension agent as well as the Ward County Extension agent, and they've been pretty good about the soil and the composting and that kind of stuff.
Marv, where do you get your compost? It's a huge challenge for me, is finding enough compost.
I just drop stuff as I'm harvesting it.
Mm-hmm.
For instance, carrot tops, just cut them off with a knife and drop them right there, and that becomes green manure. Beet tops, kohlrabi plants, whatever it is, and just leave them there in the field and plow them under, and that becomes the green manure. Compost proper compost. I don't use a lot of it because, well, you're organic, that that you got to keep that compost at a certain temperature for a certain period of time. And honestly, I just never had the time to do that. I can't babysit a compost pile for 3 days. So we never did go that route.
Can you expand on the organic certification process? How did you go about that, and what are the requirements and that kind of thing?
Well, in the 2005 Farmers Market and Growers Convention, there was a representative there from ICS in Medina. Okay. And her name is Carrie Stroh. And she talked about what it is to become organic, and I was pretty interested in that. So I contacted her after the fact and got some paperwork and filled it out and became organic. I mean, wasn't that easy. I mean, it took a month to fill out that paperwork initially. And for anybody who wants to be organic, one of the big excuses to not become organic is, oh, there's so much paperwork. Well, yes, initially there was, but my last farm plan, it took me all of about 20 minutes. So a lot of those are living documents and they just renew to next year.
And they come out and do a site visit?
Every year, every year.
Yeah.
And it's usually in July or very early August.
Have you ever thought about doing restaurants and that sort of thing?
Yes. In fact, the biggest reason that we took that CSA to Bismarck in 2009 and 10 was because Perot Grill, a downtown Bismarck restaurant, was one of our customers.
Okay.
And that's the only time we've ever gone to a restaurant. We just think that we get a better dollar if we go to farmers market because there's no middleman. There's no cut, if you will. So we get 100% of what we put on that product rather than, a middleman getting some of it. I mean, the upside of that is you probably get pretty good exposure if you're in a restaurant or a grocery store, but you take a pretty big cut. So we've just stayed with farmers market and CSA. And then now that I've retired, I spent 31 years as a newspaper editor and reporter. So now that I'm retired from that, I can kind of sell some stuff out of my garage. So that's kind of been an increase in revenue in the last couple of years.
Did your kind of customer base come from first farmers market and then you started a CSA, or did you kind of
Correct.
build? Okay.
Yeah, we started a market here in Carpio in 2005. And then in 2007, we started one in Minot. And then in 2009, we started the CSA and we've been doing it ever since. And with the only difference being that we dropped Bismarck and put our focus on the Minot Air Force Base.
Okay. Any other questions? All right. Well, thank you, Marvin. Thank you, Alyssa. I always appreciate hearing from the farmers, and we have a little bit of a discussion here where I will talk about some of the other programs that Farms has and kind of where you guys might fit into that. And then I have another kind of bit at the end where we can talk over any remaining questions. So I'm gonna start with kind of doing an overview of Farm Dreams, and then I'll kind of go into our other programs. So like I mentioned, Farm Dreams is really about finding your vision, getting that down on paper or in some sort of format where you kind of have a little more clarity around it, and then can identify the next steps of how you get to that point. So I haven't gone over this part yet, but I have sent you guys an email to remind you to do these activities. So they're on our farm's website. So it's farms.org/dream. And I have 2 exercises here. If you guys haven't done these yet, I recommend that you do them right, as you have all this stuff fresh in your head. So I have a couple prompts here to document your dream. We talked about this last week a little bit, but just kind of take a few minutes to go through this exercise if you haven't already, and whether that is making a vision board or just putting this into a spreadsheet or writing it down somewhere, whatever that looks like for you. Write all of this stuff down so that you have a vision of what you're trying to accomplish. And then we also have this farming readiness assessment. This is really just a self-assessment about what you need in order to make that happen. So whether that is, some traits about yourself, we have questions about the resources you have, maybe the training that you need, which will help you figure out, maybe I need to spend more time in business planning, or maybe I need some resources for soil health. Maybe I still need capital. I need to save or take out a loan or whatever that is for you. This will kind of help guide you through and kind of at least have an idea of what you need and where to get started in order to make this farm dream happen. So I recommend that you do those if you haven't. And then I'm going to tell you guys about what some of the programs that Farms has, and just to help you, maybe some of these are going to be helpful for you, maybe they aren't. So I'm just going to quickly walk through the programs that we have. We try to make programs that kind of meet you where you're at, so you will be able to identify where you kind of are in your farming journey and what next steps might be. And then I'm mainly going to kind of focus on our farm beginnings course at the end here. So a lot of you are familiar with Farms already, but I'm going to broadly go over what we do quickly. So Farms is the foundation for agricultural and rural resources management and sustainability. Really what we do is work to support sustainable agriculture and strengthen local food systems in North Dakota. And we're really focused on North Dakota, and we define that people who are either growing their product or marketing their product in North Dakota. So we do serve surrounding areas, but like in our programming, if we have a USDA or NDSU extension agent speaking, they'll be from North Dakota. So they're really focused on that, but people are welcome to attend our programming even if they don't live in the state. And we support farmers through education, peer support, and lending. And I'll talk about each of those in a little more detail. Our team right now is the 4 of us. So Stephanie is the executive director. Stephanie deals with our fundraising, grants, sponsorships, direction of the programs, and all of the more high-level stuff for farms. I'm the program manager, so I facilitate the educational programs like this. Most of my time is spent really with farm beginnings in the winter time and the sustainable ag internship in the summer. Those are really the 2 core programs that I work with. Jennifer is our office manager. She does a lot of the financials. She also works really closely with our loans program. So if you have questions on grants and loans, Jennifer would be the one to contact about that. And Shelby is our communications coordinator. She does all of our social media, email marketing, press releases, and any of our like marketing, branding, and communications. So Farms programs are designed generally to all work together in a cycle. So we teach sustainability, and that extends to our programming as well. I'll go over all of these a little more, but we right now have them split up into 3 categories. So we have exploring sustainable agriculture, growing successful farmers, and then cultivating the next generation. And we have different programs in each category with the hope that you will plug in, where you are, and then kind of move along in the cycle of our programming. So this very first category, exploring sustainable agriculture. This is where Farm Dreams kind of fits into it. Our programs in this stage are designed to expose you to sustainable agriculture and start to build your network in the state. Our biggest program in this category is the Sustainable Ag Internship. We've mentioned this a couple times throughout our programs. So this is our hands-on education program. We place interns at different farms across the state. So both Paul and Marvin hosted an intern this year, and you are just getting a hands-on introduction to sustainable ag, and then we meet, all the interns across the state meet weekly online. We also have field days. These were pretty closely tied to the Sustainable Ag Internship during the summer, but next year we're hoping to open those up more generally just to anyone who's interested in attending. Again, a chance to go out on the farm, look at what's actually happening and learn about different agricultural practices and meet, new farmers. And then we have Farm Dreams, which is where we are right now. Farm Dreams is our kind of gateway into the next stage, and it kind of moves you into our next big program, which is Farm Beginnings. Farm Beginnings is a business planning course. So we don't teach you how to farm in this class, but we really focus on financial planning, budgeting, marketing, and making your farm a sustainable business. As a part of that, we also have mentorship and peer support. So we pair you with a mentor during Farm Beginnings, and we try to match this based off of a lot of things, but we will try to match it as close to your production style as possible. I had a student last year who was interested in starting a bison farm, and I was not able to pair them with someone who had a bison farm, but we made sure to pair that with someone who was also doing livestock. And so we try and pair based off of your interests, based off of where you're located, and then kind of what you're hoping to learn. In this stage, we also do webinars. Webinars are just a kind of a short program on a specific topic, and we don't have these in a specific schedule, but we try to keep them respond to what farmers are interested in. So if you guys have questions on very specific things, this would be, we've done things about pollinators, we've done things about soil health, we've done webinars about if there's a new grant that is released, we'll talk through that and kind of help walk you through that. And then we do have a grants and loans program. We don't focus on grants and loans, and we always try to first connect you with an existing grant or loan, and then our loans kind of will fill in those gaps, and they're not meant to finance your whole farm. We're not a large lending institution, so we try to work together in order to kind of make your project work. Lori talked last week something that we've done with a few of our farmers. There's a USDA NRCS EQIP grant. So that's a reimbursement grant. So the USDA will pay you to put in some sort of, the high tunnel is the example that Lori used, but you need to front that cost yourself and then be reimbursed for it. So we would offer a loan to help with those costs and then have that paid back by the USDA. And then, so that's our growing successful farmers stage, and we move into cultivating the next generation. So this is our farmers who have been through our programs, and we then lean on them to help us teach classes and webinars, hosting field days, and then we also would place interns at those farms to kind of help the farmer, but then the farmers helping, you know, teach the next generation of people as well. So that's an overview of all of our programming. If you have questions, I can definitely chat with you at the end about that, but I'm going to talk about Farm Beginnings. Farm Beginnings is a business planning class, and it is farmer-led and community-based. So it's different from other business planning courses in that it's really tailored for sustainable agriculture businesses or small agriculture-based businesses. So that would just be like wineries, or if you're growing wheat and milling it, or something where your business is production-based, agriculture-based, but maybe you're doing other things as well. We pair you with a mentor during the course. And for me, what I think is really one of the most helpful parts is we kind of walk you through creating a whole farm plan. Your whole farm plan is a business plan, but expanded. So we cover your values and your goals. We cover your, yes, your business plan, financial planning, budget, marketing, but it also includes your plan for natural resource management, your plan for food safety, and your plan for, you know, expanding markets. So every week we meet in class, we hear from a farmer or presenter, and then you'll work on the corresponding part of your farm plan. And we go through those topics week by week. And at the end of the class, you then will present your whole farm plan. And when you turn that in, that is your, you know, how we determine if you've graduated or completed the class. And the whole farm plan is really, really useful if you are planning on going after grants or loans. Having all of that there and having it together where you've really thought through every part of that, it's going to be a really, really useful tool in the future. So what you need to know about Farm Beginnings, this year's course, it starts the first week of January 2023. We meet weekly online via Zoom, just like we are here. It's the same time. It's Thursdays from 6 o'clock to 8 o'clock p.m. Central Time, and it goes through April. So our last session will be April 20th, 2023. Registration is $25, and that's per person. Tuition is $500. That's per farm. So if you are taking the course with a family member or a business partner, you only pay tuition once per the farm, but the registration is per each person. And that covers just like the textbook administrative work of like getting you into the system. And if you're interested, I will show you guys the website, but you fill out an application form that tells us about your farm and what you're interested in learning. And then I'll schedule a meeting with you about 30 minutes just to talk through any questions you have about the course. If you're interested in a scholarship for the course or a payment plan, we would talk about that during this meeting. And then I would just kind of finalize your registration during that meeting and kind of get you into our system. And then the next step would be to pay your tuition. And then you are officially in the course, and the course starts in January. I'm going to pull up our website here. We are accepting applications. And I know I told you that registration is $25, but until the end of November, we're offering free registration. So if you're interested, if you register before December 1st, registration is free. And I've updated our website so the application is right on the top. This is farms.org/succeed. And on the website, you also have more information about Farm Beginnings. Again, kind of those details about dates, numbers, and times are on here. And then a lot of more in-depth information about the topics that we cover and what you can expect. So all of that is on our website here. Feel free to kind of look through here to get all of those details about the topics that we'll cover. And then at the bottom again is our application, which just opens up a link here. You can do this online. It is pretty short. We do ask you some questions about your interests and your training in agriculture, just to kind of get a feel for where you're at and what you're hoping to learn. So then once you submit that, you can schedule a meeting with me through this link, and then we can talk from there. If you're interested in a scholarship, I will send you all that information after you apply. My information is here as well, so call me, email me, whatever, and I'm happy to answer questions about Farm Beginnings. Okay, I guess I'm gonna pause here and ask if anyone has questions, because I went through a lot of stuff really very quickly. So any questions about Farm Beginnings or other farms, programs, or resources? Okay. I'll quickly touch on our loan program. Again, I would reach out to Stephanie if you have questions on this. Our loans go up to $7,500. So they're not giant loans, but they are helpful to kind of fill in, like I said, those little things you want to put in a high tunnel, and maybe you have another program that's going to help you pay for the majority of it. But we can kind of help to fill in those gaps. And we do offer the first year, we waive the interest fee if you've taken Farm Beginnings. So hopefully you'll take Farm Beginnings, come up with your business plan, get a grant or a loan from someone else, and then we can help you along your way develop your farm. Thank you for listening to all of that. I'm going to put the link to the Farm Beginnings webpage in the chat. And I hope to see you guys there. Again, please reach out to me if you have questions about Farm Beginnings. Okay. The last thing that we have for today's meeting is, again, to go back to our harvest document. And this is a place where we can reflect on, again, what we've learned and what questions that we still have. So I am going to, let's start here with what questions do you guys still have after going through Farm Dreams? No questions. Okay, what are you guys excited about going forward?
I know, I feel like the question's confusing me a little bit because it's like, this wasn't a class where you taught us the answers to those questions we talked about in the beginning. It was meant to more get us
Mhm.
thinking and meeting people. So yeah, there's still a lot of questions,
Yeah,
right? So I guess the exciting thing is that there is a chance to find other like-minded people, and then that mentorship that you have is part of the beginnings.
okay, anyone else?
This is Catherine. My video's
Mhm.
not working. I'm sorry. I think the networking piece, I was excited to learn. This is my first experience interacting with farms. And so just being able to hear more about your programs and get connected with people. Even since like our last meeting, I was able to connect with our presenter, Lori, and, just to have a conversation outside of this, which was just really exciting to me to be able to make an instant connection. And so I'm really thankful for that with this and excited to kind of see what else could come.
Okay. Well, I appreciate everyone's time tonight. I'm gonna double check my agenda and see if there's anything that I missed. And it looks like I've gotten through all of my points here. So thank you everyone for coming tonight, and thank you for your willingness to participate and in discussions and ask questions. And I especially want to again thank Alyssa and Marvin for sharing about, it's a very personal thing to share about your farm. So I really appreciate you guys being willing to do that. And I hope that everyone here has at least an idea of what to do next. And if you are still completely overwhelmed, please reach out to me, and I am happy to try to answer your connection or your question, or connect you with someone who can answer it better than I can. So we're gonna end a couple minutes early tonight, but it's been a long day and a long week. So I hope that you guys if you have the day off tomorrow, take some time to relax and cuddle up with a hot chocolate or something. So again, thank you all. Everyone have a great night, and I hope to see you in some of our programs in the future. So, all right, goodbye, everyone.